Hi, Craig. Okay. All right. Welcome back to Tales of Yavard. We are Mythcraft TTRPG podcast, and this is still our first campaign, The Sea's Tale. I am Corey Griffin, and I am our Mythcrafter. With me today, I have name a character.
Hi, I am, and I will be playing Iloa.
And this is going to be the first prologue that we have published in a while. So, our camera starts out panning over the ocean, almost like a seagull flying over and then diving into the water, deeper and deeper until we hit an extremely large coral reef. The reef itself is so large that it builds out into what can almost look like homes. Or, no, that is a home. And buildings and walls and shapes that are perhaps mildly concerning. We swim, the camera continues swimming until it goes into a particularly large group of coral that would easily have multiple floors. As we fade through the wall and open back up, we see a. Can you describe yourself in the beginning of this?
Sure. So Iloa is a merfolk, and the merfolk look somewhat human, except for that they have a bluish cast to their skin, and a very faint scale patterning. Iloa, in particular, would have a almost iridescent green blue hair that would be long, but like all of her companions, would be held back in tight braids so that it didn't get in her way, in the ocean's tide. She would be at this point in time wearing very, very simple garb of a very basic, almost tunic, but very fitted so that it didn't get caught in the water moving around her.
Right. And in this room, we see Iloa, we see multiple other morpho, probably a couple hundred in this super large room. Talking with Iloa now is the voice of the rising tide, Pelora the Lost. She is, as much as a lot of people are blue, she is almost an iridescent silver. Her hair, even the patterning on her neck. And she's well known for being the high diplomat of Alarafin. Even though, for the most part, Alarafin is a closed society toward people above the waters, they do still have some trade with other underwater civilization. But she will say, as you are here with your, I believe it's school, yeah. You are here with your school, the people born the same year as you, and one of the matrons. And words in Alerthin are a bit different, as you know, and as our audience is going to learn. It is less about the words that you say, as the water obscures almost all of sound, and it is the feelings and the psychic connection between yourself and the coral and the person between you. So, what you end up getting the feeling is pride, joy, and then change, join, and then greatness and possibility. And then she would wait to see what kind of reaction you have to this kind of onslaught she has sent you.
Iloa is is surprised, is a little bit confused. This is not what she expected, not what she has been raised to expect. In all things, her entire childhood, it has been about order, about the expectations, about purpose, about being a part of the larger collective and never about straying from those ideas and those ideals. And so to be presented with this energy, these thoughts, the feelings of something outside of that is a little off-putting. It's a little confusing for her, and she probably would be very unsure of what to do with this.
And as you're putting that off, you get the feeling that comes through of like, this is what the heart has decided for you to do. This greatness that they see in you is even seen by Alflaria itself. Yeah. Alarafin itself. And the heart specifically.
At that, Iloa would be absolutely astounded and would probably drop to a knee and a bowed head in a position of acquiescence, but also the idea that I don't believe that I am worthy of such a privilege, of an honor like this.
The feelings that you get back are almost word like, because Lord, this is gonna get hard to do an entire spiel like this. But of this is not something that's going to be easy. It will require sacrifice, but its gains for the community are even greater than the possible shortcomings and the hardships that you will have to go through.
The upon hearing this, the return emotion, the return energy that Iloa would be feeling here would be a gritty determination. She would be projecting a willingness to make whatever sacrifice was necessary to serve and the heart, without care for what she had expected, being willing to pass the expectations of her own life to the side.
And at that, physical touch is not frowned upon here in the cloister, but it's not something that is common. Not because of, oh, got to keep people separated, but because it's unneeded. When you can literally project your thoughts and feelings to another, you don't necessarily need physical touch. However, you will feel Polara's gentle touch on your shoulder and your neck in an almost like rise and follow me emotion that will come from her.
Iloa would tense slightly at the surprise. As you said, it is uncommon to be touched, but would follow or would rise and follow as she had been bid.
Now you do swim out of the cloister and into you swim to a part of Alarafin that you've never experienced, even in outings. When they take you around the city itself, they don't necessarily take you in every nook and every cranny. But this one gets very dark very quickly as you go deeper and deeper into the heart. And eventually, she does take you into a very small room with a very small coral, what could be described as a cot. Even compared to what you had in the cloister, this is small. And she will say, like, not say, but the emotion will be spread of, this is where you will stay. Your training begins now.
I think Iloa would take in the space and wonder briefly about whether or not she would see the people from her school again, as she is kind of taking in this space and wondering what comes next.
That is definitely a fair assessment. So, being in this space, and she leaves, the door is closed, and you hear something that I don't know if she has ever heard before, which is the sound of a door locking. I don't think locked doors were really a thing in the cloister.
No, that would there were dormitory style rooms, and the students would have been moved in and out.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you describe to me almost the emotional and mental thoughts that come over her for the next 3 days as she is left utterly alone?
I think the first response would be the easiest. It would be trust. These are the people that she has always been taught, has always been told. These are the people who will keep you safe. These are we live together beneath the rules that govern us by these voices because they protect us, because they further our purpose. And the first night, certainly, she would cling to that idea of whatever comes next, I am doing as a part of serving those who keep us safe. I think by midday the second morning, would there be food in the space, or is she just
No,
hungry?
no, there is not. There's actively not.
In that case, I think by midday the second day, in the school, there was certainly no gluttony. There were regular meals, and so she would be feeling hunger, which was something that was completely new to her. Her entire life, food has been provided at exactly the perfect intervals, that there was never any want, so you could never want more. And so as those first hunger pains hit, she would start to question things in a way that she's never questioned before, because there was nothing to question. All of her needs were always met. Um, and so as the day is progressing, she's starting to feel unpleasant emotions for the first time, not just apathy, which would have been rampant in her childhood, but active active negative feelings that she wouldn't know what to do with. Um, by the third day, as those hunger pains were hitting harder and no one had come, and she had now been alone again longer than she had ever been alone before, none of her needs were met, she would be starting to experience first frustration and then anger, and questioning the whole system of, why did you take me from the only people I have ever known, to put me in a box and make me feel all of these unpleasant things. And this would be the first time that she had ever questioned any part of the doctrine that she had grown up in.
Okay. At that, the probably midday on the third day, to be fair, the door would open and an extremely large dwelver would appear. Something that um, Iloa has experienced before, though in a very different way, will happen. She will hear words for the first time, things that she doesn't necessarily understand, directly into her mind, like she's used to having the communication, but different. The words are simply, "Do you want food?" Not that she understands what those words are, but
Is it clear that there is an inflection of a question?
yes.
I think at this point, Iloa is so emotionally disjointed from the situation that the fact that someone has come in now after she's been left alone for 3 days, would her immediate response would be relief, and any question that had been asked, she would have responded in the affirmative.
There is, he brings out from like he reaches out of the door, and from a spot that he had sitting there before, he brings two plates out, and the next phrase is, "One is bad and one is good." He is very intentional in his, you have to make a choice of which one of these two do you want, but he's also very intentional in not using normal telepathy and your normal expressions, but he is saying, you will choose one. You need to make a choice on which one is rotten and which one is not. You will eat whatever one you choose.
Is first, is there any do I pick up on any indication in his tone as he's pointing to each one and saying words that like is there a negative tonal change for one versus a positive for the other?
Yes. There's definitely like good does have a positive tone to it, bad does have a negative tone to it, but makes it very clear that he's not telling you which is which. You have to discern which one is which because, again, you are being trained to understand concepts that are not taught in
Mhm.
probably the cruelest way possible.
Um, Iloa would look at the plates, and she's still guessing based on tone what's happening, what is expected of her here. She doesn't understand these words. This is foreign to her. But she would look at the two plates. Is this a food that she has seen before? Does she know what it's supposed to
Yes.
look like?
Yes. So they are both cuts of a whitefish of some kind that is very common for you. Both of them look similar. Player to player, he's telling you they poisoned one, the other one is untouched. You need to figure out which one is which. But obviously, she doesn't have a concept of poison yet.
Right. Is there any difference that I can see looking at the plates?
Looking at it, probably not. The one on the left does seem to smell sweeter, almost sickeningly so.
Okay. Then I would if there is anything unpleasant about the smell, like if it's not just this is sweet, but if it's almost ugh kind of sweet, then she would go for the other one. If it were just sweet, she would likely again not suspect anything because she has never been in a position where she was tricked before.
I mean, I did kind of describe it as sickeningly sweet,
Mhm.
so I do think it will be off-putting a little bit.
Okay, then she would go with the other one.
Okay. He hands it to you, says a string of words that you don't understand, but he does send emotion with this time as well. And it is just, this is hard. Stay the course. You are chosen.
Iloa would for the first time in her life be conflicted
Hmm.
because she has these now very fresh feelings of betrayal that are so new to her, but also this idea of being chosen, of being honored in this way is so profound that she would be deeply conflicted by this.
Now this will go on. You after you get the food, he leaves you with the food, and the same Dwelver will make appearances every day, using more and more words. Eventually, you will start to catch on to most of them, especially the ones that are repeated time and time again. Good, bad, food. As time goes on, you get more and more. There is a small change about 3 months in when the door opens, but no one comes inside. But you get the feeling coming from the door, from the Dwelver, of join me.
Has anything happened in the last 3 months that would indicate to Iloa that this could be a trap? Would I understand the concept of a trap at this point as this is not something I'm supposed to do? This is a temptation, or would it be a logical based on what I have experienced for me to trust and follow?
They actively would not want you to lose trust in this individual. So, no, I don't think anything would have been trust breaking yet.
Okay, then I would follow.
He would then take you deeper, surprisingly, into the coral cave to a much larger room. And in this room is actually another individual. He is he's a Luthari around your same age. And Luthari, as they are, they to describe him, he wears very much this similar clothes as you do. However, he doesn't have hair. He has even less human-like appearances than than the merfolk. He's got a long, extended, scale-covered neck and a face that is almost like an eel, and a tail that roughly normal, like 3 or 4 feet long, almost the same length as his legs. And the Dwelver will just, this is new home.
I think Iloa be struck. First, would in her school she have ever come across a Luthari before?
Yes, they are rare, but not exceedingly so. They're known for being magically gifted, so they have a tendency to start out on a higher rung than most others. But they're there. They're just rare.
Okay. I
Um,
Iloa would be walking into this situation with a feeling that was foreign to her, and that is a loneliness that she would never have felt prior to these 3 months. She had always been surrounded by her schoolmates, and so as she walks in and is told that this Luthari is going to be basically with her, I think she would the immediate and instinctive response is relief that she would no longer be alone.
you get that from this Luthari as well. Because again, this is a part of the process of doing what they're doing, is they know that this loneliness will be almost all consuming. And as soon as they put you in a room with another individual, they're going to create at least some form of bond.
Mm-hmm.
Over some time, intermixed with the feelings and thoughts that are granted, the ability is granted by the heart, you'll find that this Luthari also has the ability, much like the Dwelver, to present words. His words are not as clear as the Dwelver. You can tell he's definitely learned over a small period of time of what these words are, but he speaks in a mixture of emotions and words, right? Like he'll give out the emotion of relief and excitement and happiness while using the words welcome. That being said, the tests that are daily do seem to increase. The complexity of the words from the Dwelver get harder and harder. Concepts like betrayal, concepts like impure and the absolute things and words that make absolutely no sense to Iloa are explained in some very cruel ways because Iloa has been chosen as a spy. And without understanding language, spies are next to useless.
I think in the face of these increasingly difficult and emotionally cruel challenges, Iloa would deeply lean into the companionship with the Luthari, and become jaded in a way that she never had been until beginning this adventure, this exercise. And so when she was suspicious of everything else, and would be increasingly paranoid about any interaction, the one person that she would be authentic with and would be unguarded with would be this Luthari.
Yeah, they have given themselves, they do give their name as Ashki. I don't know if I mentioned that, I meant to, but the overwhelming, oh, we have friend now, was more powerful than remembering his name in the beginning. And there will be a night, you don't know how long the two of you have been in these rooms. Ashki has started, mostly pushed by the Dwelver, to communicate less with emotions and more with words. And it's both difficult for him and exceedingly good for you because you have to piece the words together and understand them, but he is not able to communicate in the way he's used to. But one night, at some point, he just lays there and he is like, the heart provides what we contribute. What can we contribute in this situation?
I think Iloa, upon hearing that, Iloa would perhaps the first emotional response, the unfiltered one, because she is with Ashki and does not feel the need to put up walls and protections, would be to scoff. The idea of a benevolent source of power, the idea of a all of her dreams and beliefs about their system have been cracked and broken. She no longer feels, or rather she feels conflicted because emotionally she feels detached from the entirety of the world that she has known, but also deeply compelled to continue as she has been conditioned to do. And I think the thing that she would say in response, this broken tongue that she is learning, would be, how can we contribute anything when we live in darkness, when we live in isolation, when we have no power? And this would be the first time that she had actively used words to articulate how helpless she felt in the situation.
Now, is this out loud or is this telepathically back as well?
Was the original statement said out loud or telepathically?
Telepathically.
Then it would be responded in telepathy.
Okay. Okay. No, definitely, definitely fair. I feel like a lot of their conversations are probably telepathic, especially in if they have a questioning tone to them,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe once they did have a verbal questioning style that was then immediately punished in even worse cruelty. Their learning cruelty was increased, and they were explained that it's because you questioned them. But then again, sometime later, the teachings are no less cruel, but they're not your catch. You started, the more you all talk, the more you communicate, the more you start to almost integrate yourself in each other's minds, the less things happen, the less punishments you receive, the more food you get, the better you do. You guys are almost back to having those perfectly served meals once more. And there's a soft change one day. Most days when you guys are let out, because you have been taken out of your room before and taken to a larger room for testing, you've always went together. This time, the Dwelver only takes Ashki.
I think watching Ashki leave, this constant companion, Iloa would panic in again in a very similar way to the end of the second day when she was originally locked away. She would begin to panic when she realized that they were going to be separated, wondering, is this forever? Am I going to be alone again? What happens next? Is this cruelty, this concept that she has learned so intimately, is this just another game to them? And I think,
There,
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. You
I
finish yours first, and then I'll do mine.
I think for the very first time, Iloa would try to interject herself in a place that she had not been told to be. And I think she would try to ask, no, don't leave me here. Take me as well, when the Dwelver came to take her partner.
The Dwelver will say back, someone will be by for you. This is the final test.
How final is the Dwelver's tone as he says this?
Like absolute.
Iloa would be visibly crestfallen in a way that she had been hiding her emotional responses from the Dwelver up until this point, but she would not argue again.
There is probably only a couple minutes before another merfolk would approach. Her scale's more green than blue. Would then open your door and just say out loud, "Follow me."
Iloa would do so.
She brings you to a small room with a single spot that is obvious that you are supposed to sit down there. She will even motion for you to do so. And she will say, "What color is the fish's scales?"
Is there in front of me? Do I see something, or is this a riddle?
You have roughly no idea what's going on. And okay. God damn, he's smart. Anyway, but you will hear Ashki's voice in your head. Blue fish, red star.
Iloa would have no reason to question Ashki, and so she would say the fish's scales are blue.
She will ask, "What is the shape of red?"
The star is the shape of red.
This will continue where she asks you questions that you have no idea. And then after a couple moments, you will get the answers from Ashki, almost like he is being a second set of eyes for you. And then things will change as she will bring out shells. Each one of these shells, you see a red fish and a yellow star. And you start to understand that wherever they have Ashki, they were doing this to him, and he was giving you the answers. And now it is your turn. How does that go?
Iloa would be fearful of passing on the wrong information and getting Ashki in trouble, and so would be meticulous in projecting both in words but also in any form of emotion that might be attributed to a color or a shape, and would be just very meticulous in describing each of them for fear of getting a word wrong or getting a detail wrong and Ashki being punished.
This continues for what feels like an obscene amount of time. Your brain itself seems to hurt. Remembering a single question feels like an impossibility until the very end, where this merfolk will ask again, "What is the shape of red?"
Instead of immediately responding, Iloa would reach out and ask Ashki the question.
And he responds with a triangle.
And she would relay, the shape of red is a triangle.
At which point she nods and motions for you to stand up and to follow her outside the room. That when you do finally leave the room, you do see Ashki, and he looks almost panicked, like, "What if I mess something up?" Much like you were having those same thoughts, he had them for you. And you see someone you haven't seen in a long time as she starts making her way down the hall. Alara, with her silvery scales and silvery hair, will say, "Congratulations, you have passed the program."
Iloa would respond as was expected, as was ingrained, and this would likely only be apparent to Ashki, it would lack the reverence with which she had treated Alara the first time.
And you all leave for the first time. You've gotten new clothes since you entered the program at least twice. You've outgrown them and had to have gotten new clothes at least twice. But seeing the sun again and realizing it has been quite a long time that you were here. I believe it was like 3 years, right? Which is quite a long time. You are then gifted a dwelling for you and Ashki. just as a place for you to be. You are given missions to go to the surrounding areas and watch and learn and to come back and report. Ashki's reverence is not as broken as yours, but he is also not quite as reverent as he once was. But then a day that seems very different than others approaches. And Ashki himself is called to the what's the name of that? To the amphitheater of the Nine Voices. And while you may not go into the amphitheater with him, I'm pretty sure I might be speaking for you. You would go as far as you could with him, correct?
Absolutely. And Iloa would sit base vigil until Ashki returned.
Mhm. You will get Ashki will say, they're sending me on a mission of a different type. I'm going to the Silent Trench. They need someone that can see them, that can see what is going on down there and get out. I shouldn't be gone long.
Iloa to having been conditioned not to react to challenging or difficult circumstances, and having experienced a multitude of dangerous, hostile situations in over the course of her work, feel an emotion that she had not felt in many years, and that is panic. The idea of not simply being separated from this human who had become the other half of herself, but to be in a situation where if something happened, she could not aid him. And the facades that she had so carefully constructed would basically melt in the heat of this panic.
Is there anything that you actively do, or is it just the breaking of the facade?
Iloa would ask Ashki, "Let me come with you. I can help. Don't do this alone." And it would not be spoken conversationally. It would be shards of panicked words exploding without connection, without the pieces put together, and only through the deepness of their connection would it be understandable that this is what she was saying.
Right. And obviously, Ashki, knowing this panic, he says, I can't let you come with. You are the stronger of us. They have something for you as well. You know, when he says stronger, he's not meaning physically stronger. He's meaning you have the capabilities, more capabilities than he does. He sees you as being the better one of you two throughout your work. While yes, he is psionically gifted, he's particularly well psionically gifted. That only gets him so far. He has always seen the relationship as he is there to support you throughout your work. And he has not lost his reference. So the nine most powerful people in all of Alarith have told him he has to go do this mission alone. He's going to keep that. And yes, he has a thing about slightly paranoid thing that he has started to do over the last couple of years through missions where he has the ability to read minds. And he pretty well constantly is reading the minds of those around him. He knows that they see him as expendable. He knows that this could be extremely dangerous and that the things that they say, some of them are lies to make him feel better about going, but most of them are not. He also knows that they have a mission.
Iloa would do two things upon hearing this that would be deeply out of character. The first is that she would hug him. Um, she she would generally be not a particularly physically affectionate person, merfolk, but in this moment, it just just completely overwhelmed and overcome by these feelings of frustration and anger and an inability to meaningfully impact the things she cares about. The fact that she does not live for herself. And she would hug him, and she would do it with tears in her eyes. And this would be the very first time she had cried in her entire life.
Now, obviously, this is not a private setting,
Mhm.
and it is very almost recoil if they didn't treat you like they couldn't see you, which a lot of people do treat you like they can't see you because a lot of them believe that you are deficient. You do not live up to your expectations, that you didn't even graduate from the cloister. So, how can you be anything but deficient? But then you are called in front of the nine as well. These nine towering figures, one of them, I don't know if your feelings on Polara have changed much, but you used to revere all of them, whether that was, the Warden of the Deep Trenches, which is Kovrak, or, the Master Architect, Orin, but they all seem to know who you are for a moment. Some of them recognize you as you have acted as a deficient around them. Some of them don't recognize you, even though you did act as a deficient around them. But you are given a mission to go to the surface, find this group known as the Windwalkers, and retrieve something that was stolen, a large engraved shield.
Iloa, in as she is before the voice, would, having been punished for questioning before, have a facade of acquiescence, a facade of willing, easy reverence to mask the last fracturing of her devotion to this cause, as she is thinking of Ashki and feeling a foreboding sense that he won't come back and they won't see each other again. And so as she accepts this charge that they've given her, she is also beginning to plot a way out and beginning to make plans for how she is going to be free.
And that is completely fair. What so obviously Ashki doesn't go back home. He and normally you have always, whenever you've gotten a mission, went right to the mission. Is there a change for you? Or
Iloa, over the course of the missions she's been on historically, would have collected a small stash of pieces of information, journals, if you will, but engraved journals that she had been hoarding like small treasures that would have been hidden away in her dwelling. And before she would leave the city, the reef, she would return home, collect those notes, the state secrets, some of them, and she would hide them away outside of the bounds of the city before she went to the.
please hold, I'm bringing up. As you make your way towards the surface, you run across a extremely large sea-dwelling creature. These are rare, but not like you may have seen one before. When I say extremely large, they're almost 100 feet long from the, actually no, 200 feet long from the tip of their snout to the end of their tail. They look like they have a head of like a large saltwater crocodile, the body of like a swordfish, and then the legs of an elephant. This is an Aeronfoil. They are known for being protectors and fighting some of the more bloodthirsty creatures of the deep when it comes to when things start getting too close to the surface. This is one of the few things that Groff has gifted that protects others instead of just consuming them when it comes to the sea. Because a lot of things in the sea are more than happy to eat you if given the chance. You do notice it is going quite close to a ship. And on this ship, it does seem not particularly like small. Like it is a small ship, but it's not like a dinghy, right? But it doesn't have a whole lot of people. You do take notice that as the aerofoil crests up and kind of makes eye contact with one of the people, all of them seem to run to that side of the ship. Yet on the other side of the ship, not far above water level, is an open window.
I would, under the cover of the aerofoil, make my way to the ship, scale into the window, assuming as I pull myself up, that there's no one in.
No. So as you kind of pull yourself in, you find that you are in what is effectively a storage room. It does look like someone was cleaning and opened the window for some reason, and perhaps forgot to close it in the commotion of the aerofoil.
I would look around, um, and identify first hiding places. Is there a place that I could safely stow away and move around from as a base of operation?
I think it would be very easy to set it up. Most of what is in here is mostly barrels of alcohol, which I don't know if you have much experience with, and it's in what it is, but barrels of a liquid, and crates of jarred wine. So I think it would be potentially something that you could do. Now, is it absolutely perfect? Probably not, but it will at least give you some form of cover.
Okay, then the first thing I would do is identify a location for retreating to that would provide that level of cover, and then press forwards towards the door, listening carefully to see if I heard anything on the other side.
There is, you can hear someone telling a story of the aerofoil, and they seem rather in awe of what they've seen, which is very counter to a lot of what you've heard and experienced of people from the surface pretty well just killing anything they come across. You literally hear them going, "No, we don't want to fight that thing. It is, you don't want to do this. This is a protector."
Do I, as I'm listening, hear any names that I would have come across historically in other missions?
I do not think so.
Hearing the voices immediately on the other side of the door, Iloa would retreat slightly, and obscure herself within the cargo on the ship and lay in wait until such a time that it seemed that there was more a more skeleton crew would allow her to move around a bit and figure out where she was and who she had come in contact with.
Night is probably going to be the best time to find a skeleton crew, as at night this boat is mostly taken care of by skeletons actively.
Okay. Are skeletons something that Iloa would have come in contact with prior to this?
She would have come in contact with the idea of undeath, probably not seen them. These ones are particularly well hidden. One of them is in a full set of plate mail armor that completely hides the fact that he's a skeleton. Another one is covered in like cloths and bandages and stuff like that. And another one has a significant amount of armor Black. I think it's black. Anyway, I'm not sure she would identify them as being skeletons, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Because most people don't when they see them. You would easily be able to make your way through the ship at that point while people are sleeping. The boat itself is relatively well maintained and well loved. If you look above deck, you will actually see a tree growing in the center of the boat. It's a tangerine tree. But something that is easily gotten to would be what used to be the captain's quarters and is now the planning area of the crew, where as you look, there's two bookshelves full of books, and it is very easy to go through and figure out either this crew is a member of the Windwalkers or they are hunting them.
Iloa would read through as much of the information that is it in a language that is recognizable to her.
Yes.
Okay.
So realistically, almost all of Yavard speaks the same language that was gifted to them by one of the Pantheon, Cordanta, being the goddess of balance and equality. Pretty well said, we're all going to speak the same thing at minimum.
Okay. Iloa would read through and make note of the specifics, especially pertaining to the Windwalkers, but also pay special attention to any sort of maps that she came across, making notes about where they were, as far as she could tell, where they had been, comparing it to what she knew of the islands in the region, and making note of what was beyond the scope of what she had experienced prior.
They have
Um,
different names for the islands. This will be something you can easily tell.
would the
Um,
shapes of them and in relation to where they are to make sense to her?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Though also, I think looking at these maps and the islands and figuring out, okay, this is where we're at, you find out the world is much bigger than even you ever thought it was. You've never really been outside of like a 15-day swim,
Hmm.
and looking from there, there's only one landmass, right? So like this must be everything. And then as you look out, there's just nothing.
The other thing that Iloa would be looking for as she's scanning these documents would be references to sea monsters and where they had been. For part of her plans and rebellion against the voice would make the cryptid creatures of significant note to her.
There will be a mention of a gigantic megalodon shark that the crew had seen some time ago. And they had seen it outside of well, I gotta remember where they had seen it outside of. They had seen it outside of a island that they called Monster, but it is not one that you are familiar with. But they were on their way to one that you are familiar. They have a different name for it, but you know it as Akai.
Having gathered the information that was accessible here and glancing over tomes that would have been on bookshelves and looking for things of significance or other things that would indicate who was here, I would look up. Are there rafters, ceiling support beams, anything like that in this room?
Yes.
Are they large enough that I could climb the bookshelf and make my way to the top of them? And if I were to lay flat on it, could be disguised so that I could watch the comings and goings of this room.
Yes.
I would do that. I would hide myself up in the rafters so that I could watch what was happening in the space.
And watch you do. This is where we're going to end our prologue. As you are aboard the Bounty's Fortune. Yay!